Good morning. Protesters rallied to urge the Shinzo Abe government to scrap its chase for the right to collective self-defense. Tokyo is expected to make an announcement this Tuesday. Talks are to take place in Beijing regarding follow-up measures to the North Korean abduction issue in a meeting of senior diplomats between Pyongyang and Tokyo. Technological advances detecting landslides, potentially saving lives. The itch, scratch, burning fungal infection that persists. What can you do about it? On Korea Today, Tuesday, July 1st, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And good morning. Thank you for joining us on Korea Today. I'm Kim Young alongside Oh Jin-ju and Kim Min-jung.
Thank you for joining us on Korea Today on this July 1st. Believe it or not, today marks the beginning of the second half of 2014. And I know it's a cliche to say this, but it feels like just yesterday we rang in the new year.
Right.
And already half of it is gone. What happened?
I know, I
That's
can't
not a good
believe
sign.
it.
Time is flying by too
You're
quickly.
aging, right?
Right, and looking back, the first half was filled with news, from tragic news to exciting news, from Seoul fair disaster to Brazil World Cup. And I hope we could hear more good and exciting news in the latter half of the year, both nationally and personally, perhaps.
Personally.
Well, there's some good news here. July means that it's also the beginning of the vacation season.
That's right.
So there you go. A lot of people planning for their holidays.
All right, well, in the meantime, we are going to begin in Japan. It is facing an important decision on this Tuesday, and we have the details in our top story. As the Japanese government gears up to regain its right to collective self-defense, thousands of protesters gathered in front of the office of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo, demanding that the Abe administration scrap the plan that would allow Japan to play a bigger military role in the global arena. The cabinet is expected to announce the decision on whether to reinterpret Japan's pacifist constitution drawn up after World War II that prohibits Japanese troops from engaging in combat outside of Japan. The Japanese leader had said the revision is needed in light of Beijing's growing military presence, as well as to ward off threats from North Korea. According to surveys by the Japanese dailies, including Asahi, Mainichi, and Nihon Keizai, the majority of the Japanese public are against the move.
And just one day after conducting short-range missile tests and mere days ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to the south, Pyongyang proposed that the two Koreas halt all military hostilities beginning on this Friday, July 4th, in a rare and unexpected conciliatory gesture. The North National Defense Commission also made specific mention of canceling Seoul and Washington's Ulchi Freedom Guardian exercises scheduled for August in order to set a friendly mood for inter-Korean dialogue and the 2014 Incheon Asian Games beginning in September, to which the North said it would send athletes. Pyongyang has also called on both sides to stop slandering each other. Some experts believe Monday's offer has the Chinese president's visit in mind, while others point out the softer language and see it as a real conciliatory gesture.
And starting today, the ban on school excursions will be lifted here in Korea. The Ministry of Education announced a set of measures on Monday to ensure that school retreats take place in a safe and educational manner. Schools will be allowed to organize small-sized outings starting in July ahead of summer break, preferably in groups of 3 to 4 classes. For excursions involving more than 150 students, the schools need to receive individual consent from the students and their parents and have at least one safety personnel on standby in case of an emergency. Retreats at schools across the country had been suspended following the sinking of the Seoul ferry in April, which killed some 300 people, mostly students on a school outing. According to the new regulations, buses, ships, and flights carrying students on school excursions are required to submit safety guidelines.
Senior diplomats from North Korea and Japan will meet today in Beijing to discuss follow-up measures to the agreements reached on the issue of Japanese nationals kidnapped by the North decades ago. Tokyo has promised to lift some of its sanctions against Pyongyang in return for a reinvestigation into the matter during their last round of talks in Stockholm. And it seems that the two countries have been getting cozy in the recent weeks, if not months, having a considerable impact on the diplomatic dynamics in the Northeast Asian region. Let's first take a look at this next report to find out what lies behind the change of North Korea-Japan relations.
In late May, delegations from North Korea and Japan held a meeting in Stockholm, Sweden. In this secretive meeting between the two countries, the key focus of the discussion was on the reinvestigation of the Japanese who were adopted by the North decades ago. In 1970, a Japan Airlines jetliner from Tokyo bound for Fukuoka carrying 129 passengers was hijacked by members of the Japanese Communist-led Red Army faction.
North Korea agreed to conduct a comprehensive investigation on the missing Japanese that may have been possibly abducted and all other Japanese citizens. Our mission continues until the day all of the families of the abduction victims are reunited with their loved ones.
조일 평양 선언에 따라 불행한 과거를 청산하고 현안 문제를 해결하며 국교 정상화를 실현하기 위하여 진지한 협의를 진행하였다.
Today's discussion between North Korea and Japan is a follow-up meeting to further check details of the Special Investigation Committee in charge of reopening the probe on abductions. In the case that the Special Investigation Committee is established as scheduled, vessels from North Korea and Japan could travel between the countries. If North Korea is willing to cooperate in solving the abduction issue, the normalization of diplomatic relations between the two nations could come sooner than we expected.
The reason behind the political rise of Prime Minister Abe is closely related to the abduction issue, and Abe is using this as a tool to strengthen his political stance. He's utilizing North Korea in this way because it is a new card he's pulling out to apply pressure on South Korea.
Meanwhile, North Korea fired short-range missiles over the weekend. In the midst of improving its relations with Japan, what could be the reason behind the North's provocation towards South Korea and Japan? Despite North Korea's actions, Japan will go ahead with talks with communist regime.
Looking at North Korean diplomacy, here's a nation that thinks they are a weak country surrounded by powerful ones. Although North Korea is a threat in the Northeast Asian region, it is highly unlikely that they will use military force to threaten Japan.
Japan is set to approve its collective self-defense during the cabinet meeting today, leading the country to be able to go to war. It's important to note that North Korea-Japan talks, along with Japan's cabinet approval of its collective self-defense, will be taking place ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul this week. Could North Korea and Japan's move make an impact on South Korea-China relations?
Friendly relations between North Korea and Japan cannot be a good influence to South Korea and Japan's strained relations due to historical distortion. Also, since Japan and China are in dispute over territorial issues on the islets in the East China Sea, known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China, a budding relationship between South Korea and China could be a big burden for Japan.
I think North Korea will use a cooperative relationship with Japan as a breakthrough in their relations with the U.S. So I don't think North Korea-Japan talks will have a significant influence on South Korea and China.
But some analysts pointed out that it is necessary to form a new type of diplomatic relation for North Korea and Japan as they foster a cooperative relationship.
I feel that we need a new structure in Northeast Asia if the past consisted of cooperative relations between China and North Korea versus US, Japan, and South Korea. The future should establish a new order in relations of Northeast Asian nations.
And to tell us more about the political and diplomatic significance of strengthening North Korea-Japan ties in the region, we have Paul Mitford, senior researcher from the International Peace Research Institute, Oslo, and professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology on the line. Thank you for joining us today, Professor.
You're welcome.
So today's high-level talks between Pyongyang and Tokyo come just days after North Korea's recent missile launch, and Japan says it will protest against the move during the meeting. What kind of message do you think was North Korea trying to send to its neighboring countries through the missile launch, and will North Korea's latest provocation have any effect on today's talks?
I don't think it will have any effect on today's talks. Japan will issue its protest over the launch at the talks, and then the talks will go on. One thing, it's always hard to know what North Korea is thinking or planning or the intentions behind its actions. But one thing, it seems very clear to me, this was not aimed at Japan. These were short-range missiles, apparently Scud-like type missiles that cannot reach Japan. So the launch might have been aimed at South Korea, sending a message to South Korea or maybe China, but I don't think it was aimed at Japan. They would have launched a longer-range Rodong missile if they wanted to send a message to Japan.
And as you mentioned briefly, many experts here in Seoul also say the recent missile launch was a military demonstration by North Korea, showing its discontent over Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to South Korea this week, which comes ahead of his visit to the north. Now, is Pyongyang turning to Tokyo as it fears that Beijing is distancing itself from them? What's your take on this?
That is one way to think about it. The other possible way to think about it is that Pyongyang wants to distance itself from Beijing because it feels too dependent on China. The sanctions that Japan and South Korea and the U.S. have imposed on North Korea have simply made North Korea more dependent on China. But I think North Korea doesn't want to be too dependent on any power. It wants to kind of balance in between the powers in Northeast Asia. So I think that could be a major reason for them moving closer to Japan. And also, I think they just see an opportunity to improve relations, that there's some interest in Japan in doing this.
And now, closer North Korea-Japan ties are denting the cooperation among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan when it comes to sanctions on the North. And Washington had already expressed its concerns over Tokyo individually easing sanctions on Pyongyang. Now, will this have any impact on the defense alliance among Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo?
I guess I don't think it will, because Japan has had fairly strict sanctions on North Korea over the last 10 years or so. I believe stricter than in the case of South Korea. And these are, after all, unilateral sanctions. So I'm not convinced that Washington is that unhappy about this. And this may actually redound to the advantage of both Washington and South Korea, in the sense that arguably the three allies have been putting up too many sticks and not enough carrots towards North Korea, and that it's important to send a message to North Korea that if they begin to cooperate, that there will be benefits for them to do this. And if the negotiations are successful and the agreement is carried through successfully, some easing of the sanctions might give North Korea at least a modest incentive to behave more moderately and less aggressively in the short run.
All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have this morning. Thank you for your insight today, Professor.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
That was Professor Paul Mitford from Norway on the recent change in relationship between North Korea and Japan.
Good morning. It's time to run through the front pages of your newspapers. And yesterday, President Park Geun-hye held her first meeting with senior secretaries since retaining the prime minister after 2 nomination failures, where she touched upon various local issues. We'll take a look at some of the things that were discussed at the meeting. But before we do that, we'll take a look at this picture here first on 중앙일보, and you did hear about this at the top of the hour. Starting in Japan, the title of the image says, majority of Japanese oppose collective self-defense. Now, polls in fact show that more than half of Japanese oppose Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's attempt to lift the country's ban on collective self-defense rights. Now, public protests are intensifying over there. Here you see a citizen holding up a sign that mocks Abe to resemble Hitler. Meanwhile, the caption adds that the Abe administration plans to approve the final version of the resolutions today at the earliest if the ruling bloc passes on a green light. And now we'll bring things local. Take a look at this article. And President Park Geun-hye asked both the ruling and opposition parties to somehow reshape Korea's confirmation hearing system. So the headline reads, President Park asks political parties to seek ways to improve the confirmation hearing process. And here in the sub-headlines, it notes that on a plan to establish a new secretarial office devoted to finding capable candidates for high-ranking government offices and vetting their qualifications as well as personal histories, Park asked the parties to join forces and find a better vetting method. She also mentioned that she doubted anyone could survive the kind of personal attacks and scrutiny of the media faced by her two failed nominees. And now sliding over to 조선일보, and we'll take a look at this top story. This one, of course, on the core topics slated for President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping summit this Thursday. The headline says, reunification of Korea is to be key agenda at the Korea-China summit. And the subheadline here says, this will actually be the first in-depth discussion between the two leaders regarding unification. And on this note, they are expected to underscore their opposition to North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons. Thus, after the summit, they are to issue a joint statement, which observers presume will include their resolve to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. And going on to another domestic issue on 동아일보. And this one is on a particular easing of a regulation. The title says, government and ruling party push for abolition of price ceiling on private land development. In line with this, their pursuit on this, according to the subheadlines, experts are also saying that now it is essential to ease such regulations that were put on at times when house prices were skyrocketing so that the economic recovery can proceed. However, the main opposition party is opposing this move, although it did say it is willing to consult with the ruling party on this matter. And now let's wrap with a look at the Mail Business newspaper. To this story towards the bottom. And this is about another item slated for the summit between Korea and China. It looks like Korea and China are to grant a visa-free entry to official passport holders. The header says Korea-China era of visa-free entry approaches. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs yesterday, the de facto agreement says Korean passport holders, including public officials, will be exempt from having to hold a visa for up to 30 days during their stay in China. Now, the two nations are expected to conclude this visa exemption agreement during their Korea-China summit. And now that the conclusion has been materialized, official passport holders will likely be granted a visa-free stay within this year. And that was a look at your newspaper headlines for this Tuesday. And coming up are the stock numbers from Monday.
Midday highs are expected to shoot beyond 30 degrees Celsius here in Seoul and also in Daegu. Oof.
That's right. So we're talking about entering July, first day of July. Now the peak season months are peak summer months are coming along, but we are expecting a little bit of thunderstorm activity today.
Today? I didn't know that. We'll take a closer look at the weather conditions for today with our Chun Sung-cho, who joins us from another park here in Seoul. Good morning to you, Sung-cho.
Good morning, guys. I'm reporting live from the Hangang Park. Today's forecast calls for light showers in some parts of Gangwon-do, Gyeongsangbuk-do, and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces in the late afternoon, possibly accompanied by thunder and lightning. Today, however, in other regions will be scorching hot under partly cloudy skies with high levels of UV rays. The Korea Meteorological Administration even issued a heat advisory in Gyeongsangbuk-do province and added that people in the region should try to avoid outdoor activities. Strong sunlight will heat up the peninsula, even pushing the temperatures into the upper 20s and even 30s. And with that, let's take a closer look at today's temperature readings. Seoul, Gwangju, and Daejeon's midday highs are 31, and Daegu is the hottest at whopping 33 degrees Celsius. The coolest city will be Gangneung, remaining at 27 degrees. Tomorrow, the monsoonal front, which is over the South Sea, will approach the peninsula again, but affecting just the southern regions. This is all for me with the weather forecast. Back to you, Minjang.
The biggest international news at the moment came in the wee hours of this morning. The 3 Israeli teenagers who had been missing for weeks were found dead. And we'll get the details from our Eunice Kim, who joins us from the news center. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Good morning.
What more can you tell us?
Minjung, Israeli military officials say 3 bodies were found in a pit in a West Bank town of Halhul. They've been taken in for forensic identification, but are believed to belong to those of the 2 16-year-olds and 1 19-year-old gone missing since last month. They were last seen hitchhiking home at a junction near Hebron in a Jewish settlement, according to reports. Israeli officials have been saying they were kidnapped by Hamas, and now a spokesman for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said all of Israel was mourning the 3 teens, quote, brutally murdered by the Hamas terrorists. The Israeli leader also called an emergency security meeting with his cabinet to talk about a response during which he promised Hamas will pay. A Hamas spokesman had earlier called the blame stupid and baseless. The U.S. State Department had urged restraint from both Israel and Palestine. One of the 3 teens was an American national. Ukraine and Russia have agreed to work on a bilateral ceasefire as Kiev's truce with pro-Russia separatists was due to expire Monday evening, local time. The development comes as the leaders of the 2 states, flanked by French President François Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, had engaged in a 4-way teleconference. The French presidential office says Kiev and Moscow will additionally work together, or rather work towards strengthening border controls, as well as organizing substantial tripartite negotiations and also freeing more hostages.
And today marks the 17th anniversary of Hong Kong's handover to China, and massive pro-democracy protests are anticipated today.
That's right. 17 years ago today was when Britain transferred sovereignty of Hong Kong to China. And of course, the city-state has been under the one country, 2 systems approach since then. Fast forward to this July 1st. Pro-democracy activists say they are expecting some 500,000 people to show up in the rallies planned for today to demand for more say in the way that Hong Kong is run. That would make them the largest demonstration in Hong Kong's recent history. They're also working on the momentum built from the 10-day unofficial referendum organized by Occupy Central with Love and Peace, which saw nearly 800,000 residents vote on how they thought their next chief executive should be elected. That's about 22% of the city's total population. Beijing officials had called the ballot illegal and invalid. China's state-run media called it a farce and folly. And that's a wrap of the global headlines we're following this morning.
And still to come, summer, the season of formidable weather in Korea, the heat, the humidity, and the monsoon season. Floods can cause a great deal of destruction, and Korean tech moves one step closer to disaster prevention. More on IT+.
Over the last 10 years or so, Korean musicals have taken a pivotal turn, grown exponentially, and are also being offered overseas. And our Im Yoon-hee joins us with more on this. Now, we're used to seeing foreigners come to Korea to catch some of these musicals that feature their favorite stars, but now we're seeing exports, this being exported to other countries.
Right, so Korean musicals have really been growing in popularity both locally and abroad. So more and more Korean musicals are being licensed to foreign countries, including China. So take a look. The 2006 musical by playwright Chang Yu-jung was a huge success on the Korean peninsula and has even spread to China, now a part of the musical market there. It's just one of the many musicals being ushered into the neighboring country, a venture being spearheaded by one of the leaders in Korea's entertainment industry, CJ A wide range of various Korean original performances have been brought into China's market due to the demand for more K-performances. Performances that have captured the attention of the younger audience.
70% of the audience is made up of young people in their 20s to 40s. So in order to appeal to this young crowd, the content is very important. The point is to make it so that they can sympathize with the plot.
It's not just the modern performances that have been doing well. Traditional Korean performances by the Cheongdong Theater have also been hits with the Chinese audience.
This is the first time in Fuzhou that I've seen a traditional Korean performance. I hope to see something like this again. I'm very excited.
The Chinese audience is very responsive in applause, so it gives me strength and makes the performance more fun.
The musical industry in China brings in an average of 1.5 trillion won per year in sales, and Korea has already grown 5 times the size of that. The exchange between Korea and China in the musical market involves many factors in order to expand. And this coming September, a collaboration between theaters, production companies, and investment groups will gather for a Korea-China musical exposition.
Korean musicals have become the model for musical content and competition in China. In the musical market, competition has a very large role, so this is an opportunity for China to expand and for the two countries to work together.
The K-musical is said by some to be the next vehicle for expansion abroad, and joint ventures such as the Korea and China musical relationship will hopefully carry the next Hallyu wave.
So it seems that we're getting multiple sources of Hallyu to be spread around the world, but that's the key word here, around the world. This is China. I mean, of course, a huge population and a very big country, but at the same time, are there other countries that this content is being exported to?
So Japan has also been a growing customer. The musical Finding Mr. Destiny, which we saw early in the report, has also been being shown in Japan, along with many other musicals, all headed by the same company, CJ And so they really are trying to expand this K-pop Hallyu wave onto other countries.
Okay, so some of this content involves Korean actors, and they're going out there and touring various parts of China, for example, to perform their musical, right? But there's also Korean musical actors who make it onto a completely different scene, right?
So a very big accomplishment. Hong Kwang-ho is one of the biggest Korean musical actors here, and he recently made his debut in Miss Saigon over in West London at the Prince Edward Theater. And so a very big feat for Korean musical actors. And so they have been making their entrances abroad. And so we're very excited for them. All right. There are a lot of talented musical actors here in Korea. So we hope that this opens up new gateways for them to perform. Thank you very much for that. A pleasure.
And stay with us on Korea Today. It is the summer, which means that you are going to be sweating a little bit. But what if you're always wearing some dress shoes or tennis shoes and walking around, running around? Well, still ahead, we're going to be taking a look at athlete's foot. It is a problem that peaks during the summer. If you don't want to be one with the athlete's foot and get stuck with that smelly feet and that itchy, burning sensation, stick around for today's Health. Plus, we have some tips that you might find useful.
And time now for News Sum Up. For those of you wanting to lose a few kilos or work some muscles for the summer season, there's a new style of exercise that's catching people's attention lately.
That's right. The idea is to alternate vigorous exercise with periods of less intense exercise or even rest. And the good thing is that you can get all the exercise you need in less than 30 minutes. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Our Seoul Misorang joins us with details from the digital room. Good morning to you, Misorang.
Good morning. And you know, proponents of the exercise say that despite its short length, it has the same health benefits of the traditional 45-50-minute exercise routines. Before I delve deeper into this though, let's run through some of the other issues that are trending online. Korean researchers discover the molecular cause of memory loss in Alzheimer's disease. After complete cessation due to the Seoul ferry disaster, school excursions are to resume again from July. There are widespread changes starting today, the beginning of the second half of the year, from tax reforms and new transportation routes to amendments in the basic pension plan. And the organizing committee of the Incheon Asian Games announced the 14,000 successful applicants chosen to volunteer at the upcoming games. Now going back to the first listing there, high-intensity interval training rose up on the internet rankings recently after it was shown in a Korean TV program. It's a form of exercise that involves bursts of high-intensity anaerobic exercise, alternating with less intense recovery periods. Let's take a look at some of its health benefits. High-intensity interval training takes between 4 to 30 minutes in total, shorter than traditional exercise plans, but still providing the same health benefits, such as significant improvements in athletic condition, as well as faster glucose and fat metabolism. There are various versions of high-intensity interval training, one of them being the Gabala regimen introduced in the TV program. You exercise at 60% of your maximum capacity for a burst of 1 minute, followed by a rest for 1 minute, and you repeat this 10 times. This has benefits not only for healthy individuals, but for those with diabetes as well. It has been shown that type 2 diabetics who followed this Gabala regimen 3 times a week for 2 weeks had a significant reduction in their blood glucose levels. Moving on to our next issue, Korean researchers have made a significant milestone into the study on the cause and treatment of Alzheimer's disease, the most common form of dementia that affects up to 36 million people worldwide. Let's take a look. The etiology of Alzheimer's disease has been poorly understood at best. We weren't even sure whether it was the neurons degenerating or non-neuronal elements that were causing the memory loss. But in a worldwide first, the team at Korea Institute of Science and Technology found that abnormally high levels of the inhibitory neurotransmitter called GABA is responsible for the memory loss. GABA in turn is aberrantly and abundantly produced by non-neuronal cells called reactive astrocytes found in the brains of Alzheimer patients. Dr. Lee Chang-jun and his team has been able to show this in animal models. When GABA production was suppressed in rats with lab-induced Alzheimer's disease, their memories came back, giving us exciting clues to possible drug therapies in the future. And the results of that study can be found in the latest issue of the prestigious US Nature Medicine Journal. And that concludes our look at today's edition of your Daily News Sum Up.
One of the troublesome conditions, along with the intense heat that affects us in the summertime, is the monsoon. Each year, the seasonal downpours cause many problems. The Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology has introduced a small radar for the first time in Korea in preparation for the torrential rainfall. This radar sits on mountain peaks, and instead of examining a vast area like existing radars, it divides the area into 60 square meter zones, allowing for more meticulous weather analysis. Added to this is a three-dimensional video system developed in Korea. With this, a 3D meteorological map can be created, which was previously only available in 2D. With this, experts can analyze local torrential rain or unexpected downpours in real time and predict the direction and amount of rainfall in advance, reducing potential damage.
It's extremely important to recognize the conditions of heavy downpour in real time, and once it does, because the torrential rain moves, we have developed a technology that can predict where and how much rain will come ahead of time.
Utilizing this 3D video system, they were able to predict the location of a whirlwind in the city of Goyang at least 10 minutes before it occurred. By looking at the moment that the whirlwind came to life, you can notice the edge of the wind curving inward and see it turning into a twister. If you combine it with a 3D map, you can see that it aligns with the areas that were damaged, and it can also identify its course in real time.
We were able to tell which direction the whirlwind was heading and read its movement as it moved along a slightly curved path in real time. We could also identify the initial signs of a whirlwind.
Recently, with more frequent downpours due to climate change, the rising number of landslides within cities is becoming problematic. In order to be ready for these urban landslides, the Korea Forest Research Institute has developed an unmanned landslide remote surveillance system. The core technology relies on the use of 4 sensors that measure the amount of moisture in the soil, internal pressure, and changes in temperature. Once the 4 sensors are installed near a mountain site, when it rains, they can monitor the conditions of the soil in real time and send out an alert if it reaches dangerous levels in order to prevent accidents.
Using indoor experiments, we took note of the values from each sensor and then installed them at mountain sites. Once the numbers get closer to a critical point, we detect it ahead of time and alert the surrounding neighbors.
In the case of a landslide, they can use this technology to predict the range of damage and reduce harm. According to these predictions, residents in the surrounding area can be evacuated. These new technologies are expected to play a big role during this summer as well, as heavy rainfall is once again on the horizon with the monsoon season.
And to tell us more about this unmanned landslide surveillance system, we're joined by Mr. Yoon Ho-jung from the Korea Forest Research Institute this morning. Good to have you with us this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Now, there are existing systems that monitor landslides in the cities. Now, how is this one particularly different from the existing ones?
In these times, we have information to people about the warning and alarming system of landslide. It is included the soil condition and the rainfall condition, but usually the Korea Meteorological Agency focused, focused not exact the rainfall volume, but they know the rainfall or not, but they did not focus exactly the
amount.
Rainfall amount. So that is one problem. The other problem is the soil conditions. We cannot detect exactly the soil condition not easily. So that is another problem. So we developed the other detecting system. It is including the sensors, the many sensors, including the soil moisture and the multi-point thermometers and acoustic sensors. They will alarm the dangerous system. That is our point, and we will install that kind of system in your urban area and suburb area. Yeah, that's our research.
Okay, so it gathers different data, for example, rain density as well as amount and all that, the soil content and the conditions there.
Data, right.
And then it compiles a more detailed data, as you mentioned, and it's more accurate reading. So I would imagine that if you have this, the faster, the better. So when do you think commercialization will begin?
Yeah, it's now we are developing that kind of the threshold value. But in the next year, we will install the 2 systems in different sites. And until 2017, we will expand the 10 sites in the urban area and the suburb areas.
So just a few years to go until we'll see the system in more areas. And any other plans or projects that you're working on or have plans to work on?
Yeah, it's we give information to the public. That's very important. So we will develop the smartphone applications. It is give information about our alarming and warning system to public. And the other one is we can show the route from the dangerous area to the safety area. So most of people will agreement of our their locations. We will give them the information freely. That is our application's purpose.
Okay, so more people can benefit from this system. I'm going to definitely download this system. You know, we had a landslide right in, behind our station, the Umyeonsan Mountain, and just a couple of years ago, I believe. So it's really important to be in the know. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we go back into our regular sports news starting today. Starting off in the LPGA. Now, not too long ago, South Korea's Park In-bi was the #1 golfer in the world. But now, well, she's ranked 3rd. With Stacey Lewis claiming the Walmart Northwest Arkansas Classic over the weekend, the American remains #1 in the latest LPGA ranking for the 5th straight week. But Park In-bi, who finished tied for 15th, dropped down to 3rd after teenage sensation Lydia Ko, who finished tied for 2nd, was bumped up to 2nd in the latest world rankings. Meanwhile, Korean-American Michelle Wie, who's been enjoying a nice season so far, has gone up 1 spot to #6 overall. And now it's been a while since we've covered the KBO, so with the league approaching its midseason soon, let's take a look at how the teams look so far. And of course, taking a look here, the Samsung Lions continue to run away with the league, taking a 6-game lead over the NC Dinos, who are in 2nd place, with Nexon and Lotte closing out the top 4 spots. Now, the Tucson Bears have really been struggling in the month of June and are 12.5 games behind Samsung and 3.5 games back of the 4th place Lotte. Meanwhile, Hanwha still being Hanwha despite the big signings this past offseason, as they're in dead last with the LG Twins just ahead of them in 8th place. And now staying with the KBO, just like I said, midseason is approaching, which also means that the KBO All-Star Game is just around the corner. And after weeks of voting, we have a young star leading the voting. And leading the overall All-Star voting is NC Dinos' Na Sung-bum, who's just in his 2nd year in the professional league, has been dominating the voting so far. And while Kang Jung-ho leads the online voting by 8,000 votes, the NC Dino slugger leads the phone app voting by over 12,000 votes, giving him the most votes overall so far. The 24-year-old is currently hitting .360 with 17 home runs and 59 RBIs. And now let's finish off with the 2014 Brazil World Cup coverage with 2 matches kicking off earlier today, starting off with France taking on Nigeria. Now, a relatively close match all throughout the first half as the Nigerian goalkeeper Vincent Nyema keeps it close with some amazing saves. But in the 79th minute, a key mistake off of a corner as Paul Pogba scores the first goal for a 1-0 lead. Nigeria looking for a last-minute equalizer, but an own goal by Joseph Yobo in the 90-plus ends their dreams as France advances with a 2-0 victory. Meanwhile, Germany and Algeria facing off. Algeria just dominating in the first half as the German defense barely hang on to keep it a 0-0 draw after the first half. Both sides going back and forth in the second half as the second half ends in a 0-0 draw as well. In the extra time, Andre Charelli and also Mesut Ozil scoring, but Algeria adds a late goal here as the Germans hang on to win this one 2-1 to advance to the next round. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
With the summer heat, more people are choosing cool footwear such as sandals that expose the toes and the top of the foot. As the weather gets hotter, more sweat builds up in the feet, exposing them to germs. Especially in the monsoon season, high temperatures and humidity levels can cause more foot problems. According to a recent survey, the season people most suffer from athlete's foot is in the summer. We take a look at how to get rid of athlete's foot, a nuisance in the summer, and keep your feet healthy.
In Korea, you're going to be faced with a situation where you have to take off your shoes.
Very often.
More often than not, right? And then when you have athlete's foot or when you have foot odor, it can be slightly embarrassing, right? So we're going to be talking about athlete's foot today, and joining us is Dr. Alice Hyun-Kyung-tan from Samsung Medical Center. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
And also Dr. Lee Seung-min from Kyunghee University Korean Medicine Hospital. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Now, you tend to think of this as a summer disease, if you will. Is it true?
Absolutely. So, and the simple reason for this is because germs love heat and humidity. And so the combination of warmth and moisture that occurs in the summer months, in addition to all the sweating that goes on in the summer, makes summer the peak time for tinea pedis, which is another word for athlete's foot. Also, people tend to walk around more often barefoot in the summer, and so that increases your chances of catching athlete's foot. That's why it's more common in the summer.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, but Doctor, what are your thoughts?
Yes, athlete's foot is caused by a fungal infection, which we call sipdok or sipsa in Korean medicine. And these fungal infections need two things for it to grow on. You need that hot and humid environment, and you also need that appropriately moist body type for it to grow on. Now, we get those two in the summer because we have the environment, and we tend to eat a lot, and then we tend to eat a lot of cold food, and we tend to lay back without much exercise, which accumulates humidity inside the body, obstructing blood flow, lowering your immune system, making that person sweat even more to get rid of that humidity inside. And these two internal and external conditions make it perfect in the summer for athlete's foot to aggravate.
All right, so it's like the perfect environment there. Doctor, you mentioned something that I think you kind of gave away the answer right there, because we're talking about athlete's foot and you said people are more susceptible to it because they walk around barefoot a lot, which means it is a fungal infection. So does that mean it's contagious?
Definitely, it's contagious, but you need direct contact with the fungus for infection to happen. And that direct contact can occur in the form of skin-to-skin contact, but also if the skin of your foot gets in contact with the fungal particles that have been shed, say onto the floor of the bathroom, onto bedding, or onto clothing, that can be another source of infection.
So 목욕탕s and 찜질방s, those might be two places.
Communal baths, right?
It is very highly contagious, and just to add to what she said, you can actually get it from your pets as well. So if
Pets?
Yes.
Like from your dogs?
Yes. I got my athlete's from
Humans can get it from their pets as well. So if you see patchy hair loss in your pets, it's also good to take them to the vet just for checkup. And you could also get it from wearing your favorite shoe. Sometimes you just have to get rid of that favorite shoe because it is where the fungus grows.
No can do. No can do. You just have to hold on to them.
Right. And I heard that the type differs on where you get them, on which part of the foot you get
there's like a type A, type B, type C.
So you can have different location and manifestations of foot fungus. For example, when I was in the Sanujoriwan, or postpartum care center, I developed these intensely itchy blisters on the tops of my toes, and that was actually the manifestation of acute athlete's foot. And I used a antifungal cream, and it just cured the condition. It went away. Sometimes you can get reddish, scaly lesions on the bottoms of the feet or in between the toes, and that's usually how chronic athlete's foot appears. You can also get fungal infections on your hands, and they appear in a similar manner as on the feet, and that's called tinea manuum. And of course, you can get fungal infections on the nails, more commonly on the toenails, and that's called onychomycosis.
The big yellow toenails, right?
Thick ones. They're especially stubborn to get rid of.
Well, I'm sitting here pretending like my feet don't smell at all, but I mean, they do sometimes.
Your feet smell?
Well, yeah, especially when the shoes are not they're not sandals. Does athlete's foot cause this?
Well, people like to link athlete's foot with foot odor, poor hygiene, but really not so. The fungus is not to blame. It's usually the sweat, the dead skin cells, and also the bacteria that naturally live in the foot that causes it. But people with athlete's foot tend to have more sweat in their feet, and that's why they have a lot of foot odor, but the fungus is not to blame.
All right, well, Dr. Dan, you mentioned that you actually just used some antifungal cream and you got rid of it. Well, you're one of the lucky ones, I think, because a lot of people, they suffer from constant cases and it keeps on coming back. We'll take a look at some treatment options for people with athlete's foot.
In Western medicine, a sample is collected from the area suspected of having athlete's foot and it is examined with a microscope. The condition is diagnosed after determining what type of germ it is. Athlete's foot is treated with antifungal medication and in some cases topical medicines are used. When applying the ointment, it is better to use a cotton swab instead of your fingers.
In order to get rid of the fungus, you can use antifungal medication, and there are various types, ranging from topical and oral medication.
In Korean medicine, herbal medicine containing licorice and iin is used to apply the area in order to remove the fungus. In order to normalize the skin's immunity, acupuncture is used on pressure points on the hands and legs instead of in the areas where athlete's foot has spread.
Moist heat can enter the body, and instead of the immune system getting rid of it, it can become chronic and stay for a prolonged period in the body. In this case, we use acupuncture, and in order for this to revive the immune system immediately, we use it on other parts of the body instead of the place affected.
All right, those are some treatment options there to get rid of it permanently. Now, I understand that there's some oral medication that are available off the market, but some say that it may be a little bit too strong for the body.
Right, so generally to cure athlete's foot, we do tend to use creams, but you may have to use the creams for up to 4 weeks, and so that can be difficult to apply medication for so long. So oral antifungal pills are an option, but you need to be careful. All medications, of course, can have side effects, and oral antifungal pills have been associated with rare cases of severe liver disease. So you do need to be careful. Also, oral antifungal pills, or a certain pill, has been associated with heart problems, so people with heart disease need to be careful. But in an otherwise healthy person, so a person without underlying heart disease, liver disease, or kidney disease, oral antifungal pills are considered relatively safe, especially because the duration of treatment with oral pills is relatively short, about 1 to 2 weeks at most.
So, Dr. Lee, could you tell us some points on our feet that are good for massaging? And if we can have the chart there?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Yes. Could you put the
Oh, those are humongous feet.
I know.
Here?
Okay.
Wow. We found Sasquatch.
Clean foot without athlete's foot. So if you have athlete's foot, it's better to use a tool instead of your hand. With the tool, I'm going to just teach 2 acupuncture points for beginners. We have an acupuncture point here called Yongcheonhyul, which is about the 3rd from the top, from the midline. And we also have an acupuncture point here in the bottom 1/3 of the foot. Now, these are very easy places to massage. We have a lot more acupuncture points that are better than this, but it's just for beginners. You pressure these 2 points before you go to sleep, and it really boosts your quality of sleep and your immune system because it improves the blood circulation. And you can find these acupuncture points by cringing your toes. It's the place where the most wrinkles are. So these two would be a very good.
For how long?
For about 10 minutes until you feel the warmth in your feet. So before you go to sleep, preferably.
Okay, so is there a certain way you would use maybe a stick tool, something like a pen, maybe just press it, right?
You actually have those tools for massaging with a very blunt tip. If you don't have time to massage, I actually do recommend wearing those reflexology shoes with those blunt pressure points on the bottom.
They work?
They actually work, and studies do show that wearing those shoes can increase circulation for a continued amount of time in the lower extremities.
Okay.
Well, I always thought it was a medieval torture device, those shoes. It rather hurts quite a bit.
I know it hurts.
Right?
Okay, interesting. Okay, I want to try it.
All right, well, real quickly, final tips. We have about 30 seconds right now. Final tips.
So, remember your shoes and socks, wash and dry, and prevention. So for shoes and socks, cotton or socks that wick away moisture are the best. Leather shoes or mesh shoes that allow your feet to breathe are good. In terms of washing and drying, wash every day. Be sure to dry in between the toes, and you can use a hair dryer to help with that. Also for prevention, BYO. Not bring your own wine, but bring your own slippers when you go to the gym or to the sauna. Also, bring your own pedicure equipment. Say if you're going to go to a foot spa, or ask that they use disposable equipment.
All right, well, sounds great.
All right, and Dr. Lee, just quickly.
Okay, well, in addition to those, I would recommend taking a foot bath. You don't usually have essential oils in your home, so you could use tea bags, leftover tea bags.
And you said also throw away your favorite shoes if they're dirty.
If they're dirty, or sun dry them, freeze them.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's all we have prepared for you on this Tuesday morning. Have a great day.
And keep those feet clean. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.